There is no such thing as a perfect candidate. Apply even if you don't have 100% of the qualifications. Don't let that hold you back. Submit your resume, submit your application. Let them decide if they want to interview you or not. Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a podcast about women who work in sports. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake. After 15 years of working for 3 major league teams, including the Boston Red Sox, Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Chicago Cubs, I discovered the one thing I loved the most was helping women in sports shatter glass ceilings and take their seat at the table. I loved it so much that I made a business out of it. I have the honor of coaching high-performing women in the sports and entertainment industry and supporting them as they go after exactly what they want in their career. So if you are feeling tired of waiting on the sidelines, done being overlooked for promotions, and you're ready to pull ahead of the pack and take your career to the next level, girl, I'm here for it. I also created the Game of Her Own podcast to support you as well. We are here to share the stories of incredible women who work in sports and entertainment. These leaders and trailblazers will inspire you with their success and the lessons they've learned along the way to the top. Ladies, there is nothing like women empowering women. I am so honored you're here. Hello, Game of Her Own listeners. Okay, before we get into today's episode, I want to talk to you about something fun that I'm doing that starts on Monday, November 1st. So if you're listening to this episode before Monday, November 1st, then this applies to you. If not, just listen anyway. Maybe you want to do it in the future. So listen, I'm doing the Shoot Your Shot Challenge. It is back. We did it in February and I got so much, it was so well received and I had so much great feedback and people went after things that they wanted to do at work. So the whole point of this challenge is to make your move at work. It is time for you to shoot your shot. It's a 5-day free challenge. I see you guys every day in the Facebook group. I will go live almost every single day, give you daily support, some live coaching advice from me, free resources, encouragement. What I love about this is the encouragement you get from other strong women in the group, opportunity to win a free one-on-one coaching session with me. I love to give away free stuff, opportunity to ask each other questions. And then it's just fun. And the result is it helps you take a step forward towards the things that you want to do, right? So there's so many times when we can easily make excuses and some of them are legit, but sometimes when you hear the whisper in your head, you get that feeling, when you're lying to yourself, even though we're really good at doing it. But I'm here to help you. We're here to help each other during this 5-day challenge. It's going to take place in Facebook. I know Facebook is Facebook, okay? It is what it is. However, it's an awesome platform when it comes to having live sessions. So it's something that's free. So we're going to do Facebook. Link is in the show notes for you to register, save yourself a spot. And next week, it'll be fun. We're going to go after whatever it is that you want, that you've been kind of holding back, but you need a little support, a little push, a little nudge to move forward and get it done and get some support while you're doing it. So I promise you it will be fun. This is the second Shoot Your Shot Challenge. 5 days, starts November 1st, link in bio to register. All right, let's jump into today's episode. I'm excited for this solo episode to talk to you about how to transition in your career to something totally different. Here's the deal. It is common to decide that, hey, you want to make a transition in your career, and it's something that you've never done before. It could be totally unrelated. While doing this has always been common, the pandemic shook up the world. I'm sure you're sick of hearing people talk about what the pandemic did, but I'll say it anyway. The pandemic shook up the world, and this is starting to become a big, big trend. People who are just saying, I'm tired for whatever reason. I'm going to go over some reasons in a minute, but they're saying they are ready for something new. And here's the deal. The fact that it is becoming more of a trend only helps you when you start to go into the interview process. Everyone is aware that this is happening, and it shakes up the entire interview process in terms of recruiting, the selection process. It's because it is now common right now that, and it's always been common, but it's hotter than ever right now, that people are deciding to make a move and it's easier to talk about. And it's easier for people on the HR side to accept and say, well, everyone's kind of reevaluating and making sure they do something that is meaningful and important to them. So this episode is for you if you've thought about it in the past, jumping into something totally different. If you're kind of on the fence and it's new to you and this title grabbed your interest, or if, you know what, like you're fed up at work and you literally just made the decision. Either way, this episode is for you to listen to and just get some insight. I'm going to give you some some tactics and strategies that I work with my clients on. I'm just going to give some of those to you so you can get started. Whether it is related to the pandemic or not, the bottom line is starting something new, pivoting, right? That seemed to be the word of the year. Pivoting into something new can be both very exciting and very scary. Before I get into the recommendations on how to, let's talk about some reasons why you may decide it is time to make that transition in your career. And I'm going to give you 4 reasons. There are a lot, but here are some of the reasons that I hear a lot from either clients, potential clients that set up a free consult with me, or what I'm just reading in terms of research. Number 1 is the work no longer fulfills you. You have decided that you no longer care. You have made the decision. You have put a stake in the ground that you no longer care to do work that is not fulfilling to you. You've decided that you're not going to do work that doesn't fill you up. I have watched people stay in jobs that don't fulfill them because they don't believe that that's what your job needs to do. However, what I have seen in people when they do that, you spend so much time at work, it impacts you no matter what, right? You can see that their light at work is just dim. I don't want to be that way. And I imagine if you're listening to this podcast, you don't either. Listen, every single part of your job may not fulfill you. That is, I think we're all on the same page there, right? For example, the consulting side of my business. I love the work that I do, but man, oh man, do I hate PowerPoints. I don't even feel fulfilled when they're done. You know, sometimes you do stuff like when you work out, like, oh, I don't want to work out right now. But then when you're done, you feel great and you're filled with endorphins. I don't feel that way with PowerPoints. I don't even when they're done, I just see them and I see all the hard work and the headache and the frustration that was behind them. And I get so mad. I still don't like them. I feel fulfilled when I connect with my audience during a presentation, but I still hate creating PowerPoints. It's part of the reason I didn't do so well at Deloitte because they were PowerPoint heavy and it fell on my level, which I thought I had graduated from that level, but that's a whole nother story. It's up to you to think about what leaves you fulfilled overall. Does that make sense? You clearly can't answer me back, but hopefully you are nodding your head yes or no. Let me say it differently. What I mean is, for me, the PowerPoint doesn't take away from my fulfillment of my consulting work when I look at it big picture. If I had to give myself a score on a scorecard, I love a good scorecard. So red, yellow, green. I would give consulting, that side of my business, a big old fat green. However, one thing I did to help myself get over this frustration with PowerPoints is when I started my own business, I hired someone to do that part of my work. So I didn't have to deal with it. I came up with the content, but someone else made it look nice and put it into a PowerPoint and dealt with that because that's the work they love to do. So number 1 is work no longer fulfills you. Number 2, you don't feel like you're good at the work that you're doing. You ever feel that way? At the end of the day, you get the job done because you are fierce and you don't want to tarnish your good name and you just want to get the work done. But it doesn't come natural to you. And while you like the steady paycheck, you don't like the stress of trying to fit into a box that you know that you clearly do not belong in. Number 3, it's different from number 2, which is you don't feel like you're good at it. Number 3 is you just hate it. Maybe it's a combination 2 and 3, but you just plain old hate the work you're doing. Many talk about this and they describe it as a slow death, which I know is very morbid. Nothing is harder than showing up every single day to get a job done that you hate. And listen, it's a little different than the fulfill. People can not feel fulfilled, like it's their passion and their purpose, but still show up to work, get the work done, collect their paycheck, and they can disconnect from it and go home and not think about it anymore. A lot of people can do that. And it's just something I can't do. And I don't know where you fit in, but I'm imagining you're still listening to this. So you are similar. So people do jobs all the time that they hate, but it is part of our journey and it only makes you stronger. And finding out what you hate is just as important as finding out what you love. So it's part of our journey with some strategic planning and the how-to, which we're going to talk to about in a minute. You do not have to be in this situation very long. The fourth one is your inner voice is getting louder. Do you know what I mean when I say that? Do you know what I'm talking about? You feel like there, again, here I am asking you questions and I don't know how you're responding. If you want to send me a message and let me know how you're responding, that would be amazing because I'd love to hear it. You know what I'm talking about. You feel like there's something else you were meant to do and you're not doing it. It is deep down inside. And it's a voice that it starts out as a whisper. Oprah said this to me. Well, okay, she was talking to the whole audience when I got to see her show, which was one of the highlights of my times in Chicago. It was on my bucket list. Anyway, she said this to the audience and she talked about this whisper. And this is going back like 10 years now. And this has stuck with me. When she said it, I was like, yes, Oprah, I'm with you. Like, I just wanted to stand up and be like, I know exactly what you're talking about. It was like she was talking to just me. It's that whisper gets louder and louder until you can't ignore it. And I know that sounds crazy because you're like, wait, is it a voice in my head? Like, that's weird, right? That's something you can't control. But like, it just pops up. Like you start to make your career move and you're like, wait, that's not it. I know there's I want to do this other thing. And then you kind of like talk yourself out of it. You kind of, again, lie to yourself that that's not important, or you're afraid to take that risk, which we can talk about in a little bit. I had a client and she was in the 6-month one-on-one coaching program. And during the assessment, so I do like a 90-minute assessment, and they fill out a questionnaire beforehand to do some deep thinking, and then we review it and get into it together. And a lot of clients say that there's some clarity once they're done. Now, this is an interesting one. There was something I asked a question about, where you see yourself right now. What are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? And where do you see yourself? That sort of thing. And I asked her where she saw herself in 5 years. And there was something passionate behind the answer that she gave me. And I actually could tell when I read it before, when I was prepping for our session, I could see it too. I was like, well, there's something here. This is completely different than from what she does now, but there is something here. So I asked her more questions and she convinced herself that this is just a wish list thing. This is just a pipe dream. This is not something I can do for real. 3 kids, has a great job. That's not what I need to do right now. Maybe down the line. And so we went through our 6-month program. I helped this person get a promotion, a raise. So, great new title, helped her take things off of her plate that were too junior for her, add things to her plate, get paid the value that she was bringing, getting paid her worth. And she did it. It was a huge success. And she did some great work. And then we had another call and she wasn't fulfilled. She got what she wanted, but it wasn't it. And that's okay. That's part of the journey. It was part of her journey. She had to go through that to realize I need to do the thing that we talked about 6 months ago or 5 months ago. And that's my job, to meet you where you are and help you get to where you need to go. And we pivoted, and there's that word again. We pivoted and we came up with a different plan. And now she's a successful business owner. Love watching it. She is killing it right now, but she's doing something that is completely different from the sports industry. One more thing I want to hit on before we jump into the how. I want to talk about the things that keep people from transitioning into a new career. Here's the deal. Transitioning into a career that is totally different from what you are doing now can be overwhelming. There's a lot to consider. There's a lot to think through. Adulting is hard, right? We have responsibilities now, but whatever moves we take, there could be some consequences that come along with them. I get it. And so when you start to think through those, ooh, boy, it can become overwhelming. It can bring up feelings of imposter syndrome. Oh, I don't belong here. Who am I to apply for this job that I've never done before when I don't have experience in this industry? And this can be you wanting to get into the sports industry or getting out of the sports industry. Imposter syndrome, I'm rolling my eyes, you can't see me, I'll come back to that one. Self-doubt can creep its way into your head. It just makes you doubt your abilities, makes you doubt if those skills that you have are transferable to this new role. And it can be really intimidating. It's just, oh, wait, I want to get in there. Man, the people who work in that industry seem to have it together. I don't know. Can I pull this off? And you start to doubt yourself and you start to get intimidated by seeing other people do it well. Maybe that's inspiring for you, but maybe you get intimidated by being able to keep up with them. And the fear of just getting it plain old wrong. It's crazy. All of those reasons, which are real, but it's crazy that they can be such a strong force that stop you in your tracks, stop you from making progress, stop you from taking one step forward. They can easily send you into what I call the what if game, which is the worst game. What if this is the wrong decision? What if I get this job and fail? What if I get this job and hate it? What if nobody wants to hire me? Oh, what if I have to take a pay cut? Listen, I can choose some motivating words right now that will help you feel like you can get past all those fears. You can end this podcast and be like, I'm ready to go. Jahaan has just motivated me to get past those roadblocks. I don't want to do that. What I want to do is I want you to pause and look all those fears in the face. The ones that you have, the ones that you know that just resonated with you when I said them. Maybe there's some that I didn't say and you have them in the back of your head like, Jahaan, you forgot this one. It's okay. Face them. Be realistic. Some of those fears may come true. But friends, here's what I know for sure. It shouldn't stop you just because that may happen. Listen, your career is not going to be linear. I know you've heard that before. You may get the job, get a pay increase, and oh boy, you realize that you hate the job. It is not what you thought at all, but you'll survive. I went to Deloitte and it was not, I got a pay increase and I swear getting the job was harder than the job itself. But I got there and I was like, oh, this sort of corporate is not for me. This sort of structure is not for me. And I did hate it. I didn't hate Deloitte as a brand because I say this all the time. They're a great, great company. I recommend it to people who seem like they would fit in that sort of structure and like that sort of structure. Me, sometimes I can be a free spirit. Sometimes I like a lot of structure, but that didn't give me the room to do both. And there's a whole host of reasons I didn't like it. PowerPoint, did I mention that? But there's a whole host of reasons bigger than the PowerPoint that I didn't like it. But I survived. And I told myself, okay, what's next? I've always wanted to start my own business. I keep ignoring this whisper. It is so loud at this point. Now is the time. Find your first client, you can leave. That's what I told myself. I found my first client. I got to work on Super Bowl and Pro Bowl, and I still do, which is so incredible. And I left and I just put my head down and just started my own business. Some other examples. If you listen to other episodes on this podcast, so many women are so brave and kind enough to share their failures. But look, they are all still standing. If you've noticed, I like to interview people who are in that director or above category, sort of have that executive presence or are right there knocking on the door of being an executive. I love to interview them because they can share sometimes when things went wrong. Now, sometimes the women have done something where they transition into a career that is brand new for them, and some have not. But the point is listen to those episodes because they're going to give you just examples of how their careers were not linear and how they still survived. Listen to Melissa Proctor's episode. Now, she has always been in the same sort of industry, same sort of work, right? Melissa Proctor is, I say it like she's famous, and she kind of is, right? I say she kind of is. She's totally famous. She is the chief marketing officer, so CMO for the Atlanta Hawks. And listen to her episode. I'll link to it in the show notes, but she talks about how she got fired or laid off while she was pregnant. In that moment, She may describe how she felt in that moment, but look where she is now. So my point is you can survive and you can find motivation from other women's stories as well. Their stories, my story is not going to be your story. However, there's some parallels you can draw. And at the end of the day, there's motivation from that and inspiration from that. Just knowing that other people have also failed, but failed so well. At the end of the day, when it comes to these fears, confront them head on. You may get 100 rejections, but don't forget, you only need one offer letter. You may get the job and realize you hate it, but cross that bridge when you get to it. And if you can transition and get a job in a industry or in whether it's coming into sports or leaving sports, if you can transition into something totally different, if you can do it once, you can do it again. Sometimes mindset just gets in our way. So I have a download that can help you. I'm sure you've heard me talk about it before. I will link to it in the show notes. If you are new here and you're hearing it for the first time, fantastic. Either way, it's in the show notes for you. Totally free. Download it. And if you want to work through some of these roadblocks and kind of get ahead of them, go ahead and download it. When I work with my clients, sometimes mindset challenges pop up. Okay, they pop up a lot. I'm downplaying it. But when they do, and when we work through them, what I hear from them is when I recommend that they spend some time and not just kind of brush it off and say, I'm strong enough, I can go through this. I don't need to, that's holding me back. It pops up again and again. When they spend time working on it, and I'm not talking like you have to spend like 6 months working on mindset. You can go through this document and spend a couple weeks on it, a week on it. You can spend a month on it and just work through it religiously. Or work on it once a week, whatever works for you, only you know. But when I work with my clients on it, what I hear after is there is so much clarity and they can move forward faster. And that's important. All right, it is time to talk about my recommendations for the how. I'm going to go over 6 things that can help you transition in your career to something totally different. The first 2 are really critical. I recommend that you don't skip them. When I work with my clients on the first 2, it's just like I talked about those mindset challenges. They talk about how therapeutic the work was, how it was really, really valuable to work through it. They feel like they have clarity and they can move forward at an accelerated pace. Again, you don't have to sit and spend a ton of time. You just have to carve out some time and do the work. So number 1 is ask yourself why. Why do you want to leave the work that you're doing now? I recommend getting quiet and just sitting and doing this work. Why do you want to leave? Why do you want to transition into something completely new? Because once you have your why, it's going to anchor you. It's going to motivate you. It's going to be something you can always look back on, but you have to be crystal clear. You want to make sure that there's no loose ends, right? And when I say that, I mean, make sure it's not something that you ever just get frustrated over and over again at work. And you're like, I'm out of this industry. I don't want to do this anymore. It's horrible. You know that feeling when you just are, you cannot see past 10 feet. Like you are just focused on that one area and like you have no outside perspective in that moment. And you're just frustrated and you're like, I'm out. They don't deserve me. And that may be the truth. But is it something that you haven't spoke up on? Is it something you haven't told your manager? Is it something that could be fixed? Or is it something that is just internally in your organization, but industry-wide, other people are doing it well and you can move, right? So just make sure. I've had those conversations where people are like, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. And then we talk through it and they realize, oh, you know what? I need to explore some more here. Maybe it is just my company. Maybe it is just my department. And the higher ups don't know what's going on. Before I leave and decide that this isn't for me, I'm just going to do some work internally. I might be back. I might not. If you already know that you are out, that's good too. Just make sure you have your why down pat. Number 2 is get clear on what matters most. So again, 1 and 2, you want to do some work. You want to do some reflection. You want to do some internal work. So getting clear on what matters most. You have decided that you 100% want to transition into a new field. You're ready, right? You've asked yourself why, you know why. Make sure you have a crystal clear understanding of what matters most to you when it comes to this new role, comes to this new industry. Do this before you start looking for jobs. So many of these things that you are like, yes, this is what I want to do. And this is where I want to be. And like, this is how much I want to make, but it's kind of swirling around in your head. Get it out on paper. I'm telling you, it's just one of those moments where you're like, this all makes sense. And then when you start on number 3, which is about networking, you are able to clearly articulate why you're leaving your industry and what matters most to you and what you want to get out of your next role. I will link to in the show notes. You can download. I have a document on getting clear on what matters most. And I think it applies here. So I recommend downloading it and just doing the work, working through it and just spending some time. It does not need to take forever. I did have one client say that she stared at one of the questions. It was the last question, but this document's since been updated. But she looked at the last question and stared at her screen for a half hour. And during that staring period, she was just reflecting about the future and like what she's always had in mind. But is that right? Does she need to change what she's always thought she wanted to do? It just didn't align with her anymore. And it took her a while to answer that last question. Start networking. Look at the people who do what you want to do and do it well. Learn as much as you can. All you want to do is you can call them educational interviews, informational interviews, right? I call them informational. People know what they're getting. I have a couple of things that can help you if you're just like, oh, networking is not my thing. It's okay. Episode 6, back in the early days when I first started this podcast, I have an episode that talks about networking for career growth. I'm going to give you a ton of stuff on how to get that going. I also have a blog post that I will link to in the show notes that talks about using different types of networking for career growth. So there's tons of resources that can support you. Don't be afraid to network. You're not asking for a job. Your goal here is to learn as much as you can. If you have already done that, that's good. Gold star for you. Yeah, I just said that, gold star. Okay, so if you've already done that, that's great. Now you want to let people in your network know, trusted sources only, what you're hoping to do. When I say trusted sources, maybe you don't know the person that well, but you know that you can maybe call them and say, hey, this is what I'm looking to do. And you know that they can keep that quiet because they've probably been on that side. I 100% did that. And nobody sent my manager or HR a note that said, hey, she's leaving. You should be fine. So pick people that maybe aren't related professionally to people that you work with. Don't pick somebody who knows your manager really well. It would feel burdened by hearing the information. You're going outside of your industry. You're going to do something completely new. Maybe you're in the same industry, but doing something new. Maybe you're moving from community relations to sponsorship, whatever the case may be. But just talk to people that you trust, and that can give you some outside perspective. Close the gap. What can you do to get some experience? Say you're moving from sponsorship to community relations. What can you do? Can you volunteer? Can you help? Can you just go to events? Can you ask questions afterwards to learn more? Are you deciding that you want to go into finance or you want to do HR for a finance company? I literally have no idea where that just came from, but who can you talk to and just feel like, can I go to there is no shortage of free panels and workshops out there, right? So can I go to one of those? And then once I see people that I really like, can I then network with them, right? So what can you do to close the gap to get some experience? And one thing I would say is as you're listening to people talk on these panels or when you're networking is write things down, write down pain points and research them and make sure you understand. The 5th one is apply for the job. Now I know this one sounds like really easy. Jahaan, yeah, I'm going to apply for the job. But what happens is we start to make up excuses. I didn't apply for that job because I felt like I wasn't 100% qualified. Oh, when people tell me this, it actually breaks my heart. It really does. So there is no such thing as a perfect candidate. Apply even if you don't have 100% of the qualifications. Don't let that hold you back. Submit your resume, submit your application, put it in there. Let them decide if they want to interview you or not. Don't tell yourself no before, let someone else do it. We don't have time for that. And in the interview process, do not focus on what you don't have. Don't apologize for that. Focus on the skills that are transferable. That's what I love to work with my clients on is how do I take what I have now and make sure that's transferable to this new industry, this new role that I want? How do I make sure that it makes sense? How do I tell that story? I'd love to help shape that. So focus on that. experience you don't have is your potential. You 100% can do it. And hey, listen, let's be real again. Rejections are going to happen, but you only need one. So you're going to apply for jobs, people aren't going to write back. You're not going to even get the automated response, which is so annoying. You're going to go to interviews and then they're going to take months and months and months, and then you're not going to get the job. Like, it is a roller coaster. It's emotional. And it is, oh gosh, the interview process is so tough. You're so vulnerable and you have to open yourself up to these organizations, but they don't necessarily open themselves up to you. So it's just this one-sided vulnerability like situation, and it's not fun. No one likes vulnerability. Well, maybe some people do, but it's hard in this situation. It is difficult in this situation. Okay, Game of Her Own listeners, I loved talking to you about this topic. If you want to dive deeper and you want customized support as you go through this, head to the show notes and there's a link to schedule a free consult with me. We can talk about if working together is the right fit for you. Here's the deal. If we don't work together or you don't feel like it's the right fit for you right now or the right investment, you know what I love is that we still got to meet and talk. So set up the call. Don't worry about any of the things that may or may not work. Let's just connect. And again, at the very least, stay connected. And I love that. Don't forget about all the resources that I referenced. Those are also in the show notes. And again, if you are listening to this before November 1st, really before November 5th, we have a challenge, Shoot Your Shot. It starts on November 1st. So there's a link to register for that as well. Would love to see you in that group and would love to support you as you go after what you want. For 5 days, it is going to be so fun. Shoot Your Shot challenge. Link is in the show notes. Thank you, Game of Her Own listeners. Until next week.